Swap that so I can see what's going on. Good evening, everyone. Let's just find myself on my phone, and then I'll have a clue as to where I'm going and what I'm doing. It's always helpful, I find. Excellent. There we are. So now I know I can hear and see everyone. That's always also helpful. Not too sure why that's binging, but hey ho. Of course, I haven't got Facebook open, but you know. There we are. Good evening, Imrina. Hello, Connie. Let me just get that sorted. Excellent. There we are. We'll put that out of the way. Hello, Josephine. Good evening, Isabella. Welcome, welcome. It's a beautiful sunny day in the UK. Oh, she says. And we've done a little bit of a prep. Good evening, Elizabeth. And we're going to go through everything. It's a double-sided piece of MDF, so I've done one side because it was just going to make my life a lot easier rather than trying to wrangle two wet pieces and juggling about with 3D makes, because as we all know, I rather like a good 3D make. Good evening, Jan. Hello, Sheila. Welcome. If people could like, share and spread the joy, that would be much appreciated. It's really good for Pentart and it's helpful for everyone else as well. Oh, why am I doing that, you silly monkey? Because I need it on the other side. So let me just reverse that and pop that in, and then we'll worry about manhandling it off later on. Hi, Juliana. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. So we're going to create a little 3D scene today. This is a piece of MDF, and it will eventually stand in the base. Yeah, it was going to stand like that, and we're going to create a scene on the front of it. Good evening, Sylvie. Thank you for watching this evening. So we're just going to have I'm going to use some of the new products and some of the old products and mix it up. And I've been asked to do sort of a spring stroke Easter project. So it's sort of spring and sort of Easter, and it could be really what you wanted. And it's a bit of make-believe and a lot of fun. So that's the whole idea for all my live this evening. So I'm going to start by using the new cracking plaster, and it gives you a really lovely effect like this when it's dry. And actually, to be fair, it doesn't take very long to dry, but we don't need to be here for the next century, so hence that. And the cracking paste primer, cracking plaster, has its own primer. So don't use it interchangeably with the other cracking primers. So we're just going to, and I'm happy for the natural brown to show through into the cracks, which is why I haven't added any primer to the edges of this. So this is like almost like a glue, the primer, and it will help hold everything in place and stop it moving around. My craft room, it has cooled down a bit, so we might have to do a little bit of gluing and heating, and we'll just need a layer of that. over the whole surface of this, and we're going to add some colour, but I just thought it would be quite nice just to go through and just do a bit of mixy matchy really and things. I'm going to be using pieces from Hidden Grove, which is the current Stamperia collection, which of course Pentacolor have for distribution, so that's also always cool. And we don't need a massively thick layer, and I'm just going to paint the edges of the MDF white, and so that's also not a problem for that to be different from the edges. I just think you could crack the edges if that's what you wanted to do, but it would just take a little bit of time, I think, to do that. And evenings are precious to everyone, and it won't alter the project too much. So that now just needs to sit out of the way and have a little bit of a dry. She says, lifting off a bit. Good evening, Margoratska. Sorry if I've butchered your name, my darling. I think it's probably a Polish name, and my Polish is non-existent. And good evening, Alison. Welcome. So we're going to break rules, because rules are there to be broken. Because why not? And rules are there to guide you, but they don't necessarily have to be followed absolutely religiously. And I'm going to deliberately keep the central channel of here empty for the time being, because I want to be able to slot my piece of MDF in long term. So I have some of the velvet green wall paint, and I am literally just going to use this as a paint. It's a beautiful colour, and I'm going to dip from the pot. Ooh, you see, we're already making a mess. Yeah, it's always lovely. Good evening, Faith. Welcome. Oh dear. Good evening, Judith. Welcome. So I have to say that currently the plan is that after Easter, so the week beginning the 20th, move back to my every week lives. So that's also going to go. I'm just going to give this a layer of green. It's not going to stay green, this flat colour, but it's going to work as a base colour for my project. Don't need masses of paint, but we're going to create a mossy garden. So the watering can MDF is going to be sitting in the garden. Well, that's the plan. Let's hope it all comes together well. It should do. Most things do. We can always play. We're going to add a little bit of texture to this, but I do just want some base colour down beforehand, because that will make my life much easier and things. So you can see, yeah, this is bare. It's almost particle board. It's certainly not MDF. Thick, but they'll be very porous. You can see that essentially one coat of that paint is covering everything for me, which is testament to the amount of pigment that there is in that paint. Let's just do that edge. If I do the edge, then I can pop my hand around the edge. The bottom I can paint to get off camera, so that's also fine. You know, there's definitely a balance between prepping enough so we don't have too much rinse and repeat, and not prepping enough and it taking forever. There we are. So let's just pop this onto here. And of course it wouldn't be a make for me if we didn't have molds in the plenty to work with. And actually I decided that I would cut back the numbers of mold pieces, because again it just takes a while to paint them all carefully. I don't have any issues with taking time, but yeah, we don't necessarily want to be live on air for a ridiculous amount of time. So let me just lid that pot carefully. And unlike the other day when I dropped my beautiful avocado green and broke the lid in the process, I'm going to make sure that that goes down on the floor without any injury happening to it. I'm just going to give this a little bit of a blast dry. You can see that how well that primer and how quickly the primer for the cracking plaster is drying. So I've already got patches on here that are completely clear, and that's cool. So let's just, but it won't take long. And generally I think you're probably better off letting it dry naturally, certainly if you're using it on a wall. By the time you've covered from one end to the other, then you're likely to actually have the first part dry. Or certainly by the time you've covered one wall with the primer and then gone and had a quick cheeky, a little break, coffee break, it'll be done. Good evening, Maxine. Hello, Jill. So let's just put this into here and see where we're up to. Let me just see if I can tag, once that's sitting there, if I can tag. It won't work on there. I need to do it on my own phone, because there's a lady who normally watches who said she was going to be watching. There we are. So hopefully then she will pick up that we've gone live. I know she's had a fall recently, and it's not so, a bit dizzy and a bit discombobulated, as she would be. I think it was quite a nasty fall. Yeah, so let's just give this a little bit of a dry. Once these base pieces are sorted, then we can move on and do some of the other pieces. So it's really not taking a very long length of time to dry. There we are. And as ever, when you're force drying something, as I am, you just need to make sure that you move the heat gun around. Don't keep it in one spot for terribly long, because you're more likely to bubble your medium. And you might not mind the effect that you get from doing that, but it might also not be the effect that you really want. So let's just pop that up there, and then let's take the cracked pot, which is the new cracking plaster, and it's quite different to the other cracking mediums. It's a nice thick paste, so that's also cool. We'll avoid the bits, but there we are. So we're just going to pop some of that onto here, and we'll just move it around, because that's cool, isn't it? And I could, I don't need a thick layer, I just need a layer. If it goes over the side, it doesn't matter, it'll act as a texture paste. That's also good. There we are. Let's just pop that onto there. I will be painting the edges, though I might do that off live. It might be easier, but it won't stop the effect of the whole project. There we are. Now you definitely need a layer of this. You don't need it to be uber generous, but you definitely want to cover to get some nice cracks. Needs a depth. If you go very skinny, you really won't get very much. And an uneven texture won't matter because it's all going to add to the effects anyway. And is this going to look like a real watering can? Absolutely not, but that's fine. It's not meant to be. I don't need it to be. There we are. Let's just pop that round onto there. And onto a curved surface. It's never easy working with something that's curved, is it? No, of course it isn't. Yeah, there we are. Let's just pop this around. And I've just put a big blob on there, but that's entirely intentional. So I'm just going to pop that around the edge. And say I'm not worried about having complete coverage at that point. It doesn't need to be perfect because it's going to be a crackled surface. There we are. And of course we're always going to have a little bit of a headache, aren't we, when you've got things like this to get into spaces of. But there we are. Let's just get in what we can. And we can always take a bit of a manky brush and just tuck some of that into some of those spaces. Cover it up a little bit more. It's a plaster. It's not really meant to be painted, but it's going to make it. That will definitely make my life easier at that point. There we are. Let's just cover it over. Little bits, little bits. There we are. There we are. It won't crackle, or it shouldn't crackle on the edges because I didn't put the primer on. Some of it would have spilled over because I wasn't very careful when I was putting it on. There we are. I can see that I've missed a whole big area there. There we are. Let's just pop that into there. I can smooth that out with my palette knife. I'm going to pop this down because it's now inconsiderately suspended in free air. There we are. By taking this time here just to paint these, I won't need to then put any white paint on it, so it'll cut out a step that I was doing. There we are. As I say, I'm not minded about it being entirely smoothly covered because we're going for texture on the front, so texture on the rest of it would actually be what was there naturally anyway. There we are. It's just easier with these smaller areas just to get the brush out and do that. There we are. Good. So let's just pop that into there. Pop that there. Oh dear, she says. And then we're going to lift that. Good evening, Crafty Jacks. Welcome, my darling. And then we can cover some of those areas for a bit. There we are. A bit lumpy. Doesn't matter really. There we are. Smooth it out a little bit. And then I'm going to pop that there. And that can now just sit up out of the way and can do its own thing. Good evening, Antonetta. Thank you for joining. There we are. Oh dear. There we are. Okay, so that green does not look very much like the bottom of the garden. Because it doesn't really, does it? However, in Pentart's armamentarium of products, there are grass paste and moss paste. So we're just going to add some extra bits just to break it down. I'm hoping that moss paste Some of that moss paste is still okay. There we are. Some of it is definitely seen better days. That will be all that we need. And good evening, Anna. There we are. There's a nice thick lump there. Let's get rid of that into a bin. Let's just do a little bit of moving around of that. I don't want it too two-dimensional. I've got some stuff that needs to be able to sit on it, but there we are. We'll give it some texture. And I can puff that up later on, so that's also all good, isn't it? But I don't want specific palette knife lines, so there we are. Move that all about. I think I might need to get treating myself to a new palette knife, looking at the state of this one. There we are. And the moss paste comes in two colours, that pale green and a darker green. So this one is called grass. So we're just going to add some bits of this in, and we'll mix it up a bit so it's not all completely flat. I will be adding some natural moss, so I don't need the whole thing covered. I just want a nice base that is going to add some texture and some detail. And it's good sometimes, I think, to go back to some of our older products. Every product has a place. You might not use them all, every single day, but it's quite good to have the different products in the cupboard for when you need them. There we are. So that's good. Good evening, Upcycled Wonders. I'm afraid I've forgotten what your real name is, my darling, for which I apologise. I am not brilliant at remembering names. I know it's my bad, and I apologise. I don't wish to offend anyone, but I do know my limits as to what I can and can't do. So here we are. And of course, MDF kits can, I think, be bought all around the world. I'm just going to pick up just a little bit more of that grass and pop it over onto there. And transfer a bit more onto that side. So I've mixed them up a bit, and that's, I think, moss and grass isn't all one colour, is it? So that's why I think it's quite important to do that and not have everything always the same. So let's just lid that and put that away. And this is going to bubble intentionally. I think you get two slightly different effects, ladies. If you let it dry and then heat it, you'll get one effect. And if you force it dry, you'll get a slightly different effect. And it's going to be easier for me to move if I do let it dry. If I lift that up, it's going to be, I think, difficult to see, as it always is. But as it dries, it will puff. So I can see it beginning to lift and puff as I go. So it just gives you a really nice texture effect. Good evening, Sarah. Welcome, my darling. I trust you are feeling a bit better than you did yesterday. I've deliberately left that channel down the middle of my piece, so that I've got space to slot my upright part in. And then I can go back in and fill that afterwards. So this is actually now puffing quite nicely. I tip That's let me see. Let me see. I can get it to really puff. Yeah. So I can see that it's puffing up. Thank you, Sarah. It's really appreciated. You know, the lives are here to try and, hopefully to inspire people, but also to encourage people to explore the pent-up mediums and to provide some useful education as to how, or in different ways that you can use them. Each of the pent-up creators has a slightly different style, and and that's good because lots of people like different things. I can do brocante and baroque, I can do shabby, I can do, you can turn your hand at many things, but creating scenes is something that I love to do. So this is actually puffing quite nicely, without any problems. Sarah, there is never ever any need to apologise, my darling. I know, I'm just wanting to make sure that you are okay, because I know from your fall you were still very dizzy yesterday, and that's not good. At least in the UK, we're now back aligned to American daylight savings time. Our clocks went back last weekend, so we're now on British summertime. But I think parts of Europe have yet to move, and it always causes mass confusion when the clocks change. So this is just adding lots more texture to this piece that is going to work long term. And it's also just buying me a bit of more time while things are drying. I have got some painting to do, but I can then pop this out of the way, leave the cracking to do its own thing while we paint some lovely moulded pieces from the Hidden Grove. Okay, that's definitely puffed up that piece. It's like, I think it's very difficult to show dimension on a flat screen, but it's definitely, I'm getting different effects where it's puffing up as it dries. It's going all bubbly and hard, and that's cool because that's what I want it to do. I want it to look like a natural thing. Sarah, you don't need to go out every day, my darling. I know you tend to go out and have your main meal out. So just be careful and be kind to yourself. Let your body time to recover from what sounds like a very nasty fall. Here we are. So as I say, so I've painted the background green is the new Dekoratőr paint in velvet green, and then I have added the paler of the two moss effect paste and the glass effect paste, just because I want some extra texture. You could, I think, use expanded paste and then colour it with the pigment paste. That might work, would give you somewhat a similar effect if you haven't got it, or just leave it so that you can just add some natural moss effect onto that when you want to. Right, let me just clean this yuck off our hands. So we haven't got a silly number of molds today, she says. We've got 3 beautiful houses. Let me just straighten that up. My camera's obviously up. We've got a little bunny. We've got Happy House, which comes from All To Go collection. The bunny comes from one of the favourite moulds, and we have 2 little gnomes because they're going to be sat at the bottom of the garden with the bunny for Easter. Wow, that's the story's going on in my head. Yeah, so it's a make-believe fantasy process, and it's what fairy tales are, aren't they? They are. So let us do some basics. Yeah. So I'm using a mixture of Decor paint, chalkies, and the matte acrylics for this, and been a well-behaved young lady today. Yeah, it's very common on adult falls, darling. So let's just put that through, and then let's just add some of that cream white into there as a base colour. And you shouldn't be embarrassed. I know that's easy for me to say because it wasn't me that had the tumble, but you know, these things happen. These things happen. So let's just take the cream white, and then let's just add some colour into our beautiful mushroom houses. There are lots of mushroom houses on the mould. You could paint these. You know, these could be cast just as with the Pentacolor rapid resin would work quite really well. And of course, if you use the rapid resin and you've got a curved surface, then that's super easy, isn't it? Because you can then take them out of the mould and wrap them around the surface that you're wanting to put it onto, and keep it all in one place. So then just use some tape to sit it into place, and let it cure fully curved. It's a great resin for doing that with, and it's also got a nice quick set time, which is also quite handy. So I'm just picking out details on this mold. There's lots of details on the Pentacolor, on these molds. The white can go into the windows, that doesn't matter. There we are. And then we can pick out the colours areas later on when that's been given a chance to dry. There we are. So that will work. We've got, well, there it is. So that's the plan for the for these makes. We've got some cool tricks up our sleeves for later on, because I want some of these pieces to sit on the front base, not be secured to my upright piece, the watering can. And that's clearly a challenge if I want my gnomes to stand up when they've got shallow feet and a top heavy. But we have a way around that. So some of these things, lives are about sharing that information and that knowledge around. So let's just keep this the happy house from all to go. I've got lots of molds. I'll not hide from the fact that we've got a silly amount of molds. But I do mix and match them across collections, and that's the joy, because they are tools. They will last for a long time, so that's always good. There we are. So that can go there. There we are. So they now need a little bit of time to dry, which is fine. So whilst I've put the heater on the base and painted those molds, you can see that at the bottom of my upright piece, it's beginning to crack nicely. There we are. The top hasn't yet gone, it's a bit thicker, so I'm just going to pop that over there, and we'll keep going back to it so you can see that it go crack in real time, because I think that's really quite important. I will come back to these tatty pieces of clay. I do not in a minute. So let us think about what we want to do. I know what we will do, and in the order we will do it. So this is compact powder. There is a compact powder in the new wall paints, so if you've got that, don't go looking for something else. That will work just as well. And that compact powder colour can just paint in that bunny's ear. Might regret doing it at this stage, but it's sort of almost a skin colour. So let's just take our gnome, and then let's add some skin tones onto him. He's got little pointy ears, because all gnomes have little pointy ears, don't they? Of course they do. Got a little button nose. We'll add some colour into that, and he's got some lovely little eyes. There's masses of detail on here, and we can, there's some little hands, and they might be in gloves, but we're just going to assume that they're not today. Or they could be in a pocket. That would also work, but we're going to paint them as a separate hands today, because and that's again the joy of having molds, is that it allows you to custom the colours that you want. Infinite variation. There we are. Gentle, gentle, gentle. Let's just give him some little pinky lips. I will add some extra colour into that. Hi, Betty. Thank you, darling. I know Rima's going live fairly soon, I think, isn't she? Rima is one of the US stockists of Pentacolor, along with many, many more. She does lots of foiling work. So with some of the amazing multicoloured foils that the Americans have available to them. There we are. So let's just paint this. There we are. We've got a set of lips. The lips are not going to stay this colour. Compact powder, the clue's in the name, isn't it? Compact powder tells you that someone thinks it might work for skin. It's possibly a bit more pink than I'd ideally like, but you know, skin's all tones, so you go with what works for you. You can always add some ochre if you want it more sallow. There we are. And you'll notice when I'm doing this, I'm turning my mould around the whole time, and that's just a moulded piece around. It just allows me to see what I'm getting into, and which is then better. So already that they're beginning to have a little bit of life about them, which is good, isn't it? Of course it's good. So let us pick two. We're going to go for Mallow, which is a pinky red. Pinky reddy. Ooh, that's about 25 tons more than I need. But hey ho. Hey ho, hey ho, hey ho. There we are. And that's the one I've just done. So let's just pick up this, and let's just give ourselves a nice purple, because why not? Hat. And because I'm a matchy type of person, we're going to give him some purple dungarees. He's got a little jacket on, so we'll come back into there and we'll need to do some tidying up, but that's okay. So we might give him a little ochre coloured jacket, like a cardigan almost. So he's got a little white shirt, tiny bit of white beneath the his beard, and there we are. There we are. So he's got his purple dungarees on, because we can. Why not? And let's just go for some blue. So this one is a dark blue. There we are. Let's just pop a tiny bit of the dark blue into there. We don't need masses of it. Thank you, Sarah. They are very cute. I have to concur. They are very cute. Very, very cute. So let's just take this one, and there are lots and lots of it's an A5 mold, soft plastic mold from Stamperia, and there are lots of different shaped gnomes in it, with wheelbarrows, on toadstools, on yeah, this one's holding a broomstick. Yeah, I think it's a broomstick. It's a spade even. So that's cool. I'm going to come back in and rescue that his under top when this top layer is dry, because it's going to be easier to do that when it's dry, and have a good tidy up. There we are. So we've got little dark blue dungarees today, as opposed to denim dungarees. There we are. You'll tidy all. Say, if you get a layer down, let it dry. Don't never worry about going over where you don't want. You can always come back in and tidy it up. And the key to that is just letting it dry properly before you try adding the extra layers in. Okay. Let's just give that a bit of a dry. Did I put a brown now? A proper brown. So we're going to have a chocolate brown bunny. Of course we can. There we are. Lots of details in these. This is when I might regret having put the compact powder into the front of that ear first, but as I say, I can always come back in. isn't a problem with doing that. There we are. We'll just put that in. That makes that neat and tidy. We're going to use some dry brushing on here to add some colour variation. So I'm just going to pop this base layer down, and I'll use my usual pen trick for the eyes long term when it's properly dried. That's also always cool, isn't it? There we are. So we have a chocolate brown bunny. There we are. I'm going to end up with mucky hands, but that's life. There we are. Turning the piece all the way around. You can see that, so you catch all the bits, because there's nothing worse than not. I should have a black. Look, oh yes, I can see my black, so that's always cool over there. Right, excellent. So let's see what we've got, because this will be a challenge. So we've got a little door in here. And let's just paint in our door. Seem like a sensible thing to do. We'll have a brown wooden door. There we are. And we've got a little roof. So that's clearly a roof. So that can go in there. There we are. It's working quite nicely. And then we've got a wriggly bit, which is nice. I think it's meant to be a sort of roof line. So let's just pop this in. This is probably the most difficult of the moulds on this collection. We'll come back in with some of more of that cream. I can see I'm going to need to, and that's fine, because that will give me some tonal colours, even if it's not completely wet. And we've got another little roof tucked into there. There we are. So let's just give that roof on. Almost looks like a little bird box on the top of that, on this house, but it's not. It's a little roof on the top there. There we are. And I think that's meant to be a little room. So let's just paint this one in as being different to the to the house. It's that to the mushroom. There we are. So, and let's just add little bits onto here. Just pick up some of this detail. Not minding if it's shabby, it's fine. There we are. The windows. We're going to be adding some extra details in anyway, so there we are. Okay. There we are. One more bit to go onto here, and that can sit to dry whilst we tackle the next bit. What a mess, but it won't be. She says optimistically, no, it won't be. By the time it's finished, it will not be. There we are. Let's just give this a nice that's a little knob. I think it's a knocker. the door knocker even. There we are. And that's just painting those steps. Paint over the windows. I'm going to add some extra detail. I've got some umbre lurking around. I know I have some umbre lurking around somewhere. There we are. Okay, let's just give that a little chimney. It's different to that. Okay. Cool. Oh, right, and we've got another one. I can always grab umber. I know exactly where it's lurking in my cupboard. That's always helpful, isn't it? There we are. Lots and lots of detail in these, but you don't need to be too stressy about it. There we are. Right. So those can sit and dry. Let's grab the vintage grey. There we are. Hi, Myra. Thank you. Yeah, they are very, very cute. They are a bit fiddly for painting on a live, it has to be said. I've done a few of them now in different colours. Let's just do his little moustache. And you can pop in as much detail or as little detail as you want. I'm going to add some dry brushing onto here, so that will also help. But only once that's dry. There we are. Let's just add in his eyebrows. Oops. That's not what I wanted to do, a big blob. But hey ho, let's just lift that out. And let's grab a clean brush. And paint back over the bits that I want in that better colour. There we are. Cool. Right. That still needs a little bit more detail and finessing. So I uploaded a YouTube this morning. No, it'll go out on Sunday, of a different way of colouring or a different set of colours for the little gnomes. So if anyone likes the gnomes but wants to see more details on them, then there is another video that will go up onto YouTube. It's loaded and ready, so it's a scheduled post for Sunday. I think Sunday, it might have been Saturday. Anyway, I'll put it up on my Facebook page when it goes out, but I'm not going to leave you with, hands not held, because I do think that quite a lot of people are frightened of mould. I know, those are the American ladies who use a lot of IOD moulds, and Prima moulds are obviously very, very used to mould painting. And they make such a difference to projects, I can't tell you. It just takes them into a different realm. So let us paint the jumper. I'm going to knock most of that off. So this little man has a cardigan on. I'm rather liking this sort of ochre yellow clay look, along with this that purple. I'm just thinking it's working quite well. It's a bit nappy. I'll just stick a little bit of that into there. And I think it's your interpretation, I think, almost as to what bits, whether this is a jumper on the outside or whether it's a shirt underneath. I'm thinking it's a jumper today, but the other day I definitely treated it more as a shirt. So there we are. That can go onto there. As that's drying, I can see some more bits of the grey that have been missed. There we are. So let's just tuck that into there. Neaten that off at the same time. Now then. So I'm going to take some of that cream and just pick up some of that. It's terracotta, but it's a different, the terracottas that are coming out now are not quite the same shade. That's more like a yellowy clay look. Just want a soft colour for the undergarments of the other gnome. I'm not moist to that off. That will work. And I don't think there's any way of doing this other than just taking your time. As I say, a life from me wouldn't be a life from me if it didn't have some mould painting in it. So I make no apologies. Those of you that know me know that this is my thing. So there we are. So he's now tucked in there. We need a bit of brown into here. That is the handle of the pail, of the shovel, spade, call it what you want. I can just see a little bit there that needs a bit of blue, a bit there that needs a bit of filling in. So we'll just do that. There we are. I'm going to take some of that grey. Not bothered about it having a bit of the blue in it. So we're going to give, I could grab a metallic. That would equally work to give the spade a metallic feel to it. There we are. Okay. Let's lid that. Thank you very much. Yeah, well, so lovely Sylvie, who runs the DT, contacted me. I think Wednesday, possibly Thursday of last week, and they sort out what they're posting for ready for Monday before the weekend. And she said, could I do the live today? Easter or spring. So Easter or spring it is. And then but then I have to come up with a title and a concept for so that can then go to their graphics team for sorting out the graphics on Friday afternoon, ready for Monday morning posting, which is cool, and it's not generally a major problem. But so it doesn't necessarily give me a lot of time to think about what I was going to do. Now, when I'm doing the lives every single week, it's easy because I have them, I stack several weeks of live projects on the floor and have them all prepped and ready to go. But because I wasn't expecting a live, we are. So back and forth, you know, it just threw me a little bit, and I just thought, what have I got that and I thought, right, well, I'm rather enjoying that, using the Hidden Creek. For those of you that are maybe not aware, I'm asked to use, because of the collaboration between Pentart and Stamperia, I'm not completely restricted to having to use only Stamperia products alongside, but not their paints and mediums for obvious reasons. But they definitely prefer it if I can. So why have I gone for coral? Hi, Liz. From that I'm going to use, and the answer is when I looked at the papers and I looked at what I had, and I thought that was quite a good match, and I'm going to use some of those papers. I'm going to change it up a little bit, and as I've clearly used all of those wows, I'm going to be naughty and I'm going to add a little bit on the table. But that's why I've gone for that as a colour. Now that, so this is the piece that's not fully dry yet, but we can see in the space of the time that I have. So I went live at 6. I've had a little bit of a talk. We've done that. So in less than an hour, I've managed to get that nicely crackled by doing nothing but letting it do its own thing. So it's crackled really well. Good evening, Charlie. Let's just get that off there so we don't mix too much of that, and lift that into there, because you really don't need. So 50 ml sort of paint goes a long way when you are only painting small things. I'm going to add soften some of that, because there's a mixture of colours. We don't need it all the same. There we are. The Gill part is can stay that. It won't stay that colour, because by the time I've added some extras to it, it'll definitely change. I've got a bit of black on that brush, but that's also just fine. Don't have a problem with that. It's just changing the colours, because nature doesn't have a single colour, does she, in what she does? And I'm just going to take some of that red, and we're going to mix it in and across. Add some colour variation in. We're not needing very much of that. The lipstick red is a really dark red, but it's just this is just letting me have some nice colour variation in our piece. There we are. Mix it all in. Let it mix. You see me do that on many occasions. I just mix my colours up on my piece as I work. Just for me, that allows me to have that variation, and it may not show so well on camera, but certainly not on the live, but it absolutely does show long term. And I think it's difficult to do these. So my Pentart lives are often taking me an hour, couple of hours, just to get a nice result. And I'd rather have a nice project for you than to compromise and do something that's not. And I don't do small projects. I mean, to be fair, it's just not what I do. There we go. So all we're doing is adding in our detail. Right. Let's see how much detail there is in this. Just going to add a little bit of colour under there. It's not going to stay like that. So there are 3 little mushroom hats tucked in the bottom of there. And my original project had probably 15 molds in it, so I had to be realistic. So I think there's another mushroom hat tucked in there, and behave and cut it back, because clearly this is going to take me a goodly while. You definitely didn't need me doing 15 molds like this. Though I guess I could have pre-done some of them. There we are. Okay. So it's just, I can see some bits that I just need to add a little bit of extra detail into. That's a set of steps. And there's another window lurking over there. There we are. Excellent. So let's come back to that coral. We are getting there. We are getting there. My lovely friend, good friend Liz, who might now be watching, she might not be, and I went to a wholesaler, the floristry wholesalers, last week. I often use floristry pieces in my work, and even on my cards. I just think that they add some extra stuff and extra detail into what you're doing, and they had lots of what I would say craftable as opposed to floristry size pieces. Floristry flowers are often quite big, but they had lots of them that were much better for crafting sizes. So that's cool. There we are. We're nearly. Oh, absolutely. I could have taken, yeah. But half the joy of it actually is to watch, it is making something that you can be happy with, that's well made. I don't like taking shortcuts and teaching people the wrong way to do things. If these are meant to be educational activities from Pentacolor, they have fabulous educational YouTubes, with all of their projects, but it's bad practice, I think, when you're teaching to use something different. So we're going to give those a wee bit of a blast, because I want to add some varnish to them, and I can get rid of a whole mountain of stuff. I do need to add some green to something. And I do need to find what I've done with the umbrella. Which is not on the floor. It's got gold wax on it. I definitely don't want gold wax at the moment. I'll grab the umbrella in a minute. Right, excellent. Let us just give this with a better brush than that. I can see my umbrella. It's on the floor, which is good. think that brush is solid. That brush can go in the bin. That brush is not going to help me with any, is it? If it's absolutely solid. There we are. So I'm just going to add a layer of varnish to this. I'm using Silky Shine, but it could just as easily be matte. I probably wouldn't use a soft touch. The mushrooms do feel soft, so it wouldn't be, you know, necessarily the wrong thing to use Silky Shine. There we are. Let's just add a layer of varnish to seal all of that paint in. Little thick layers. There we are. It can sit there. She says don't want thick layers, and she's put a huge, great big thick layers. But that's fine. We can move it about the pieces. Just want to. It's just so that I can add some extra detail in here. This is a water-based varnish. It will dry relatively quickly, which is cool. And then I can add some dry brushing and some detailing, my low lights and my highlights, because they just make such a huge difference to pieces overall by able to do that. There we are. They will definitely become much better when they've got some low lights and highlights added to them. And I'm going to grab some green. I've got sitting on the desk, there are some squidged pieces of paper clay, and the reason for those will become clear with time, and they don't necessarily need to be varnished, but they do need to have a base coat of green. So let me just grab that. Hi Natasha, welcome my darling, welcome. So I know they look awful. They are literally pieces of clay. When I'm putting them on the piece, you'll understand why. For now, just bear with while I colour them so that they're less obvious when I use them, though they will get largely hidden. But there's nothing worse than something bright white when you don't need it to be bright white. And I know that they look strange and peculiar. That's because they are strange and peculiar. But I needed these to be dry. Because otherwise it's just wasn't going to, you know, it's just going to be very difficult to freestand the gnomes without something to help hold them in place. So those are just bits of clay for stabilizing. No problem, darling. No problem at all. Now I can see a big piece that I've missed there. There we are. And we can come back in and tidy that up as we need to. Right. Let's just get that red out of the way, because red is like black. It will get on everything. Let's just move. Sorry, while I just clear some decks. I've got so much stuff around me now. I just need some of it out the way while it's just going to make my life a bit easier if I clear some of that off out of the way. There we are. That can go there. That can go there. So I can now get rid of that piece of masking tape off the bottom of there, and that was intentionally put there so that I can slot it into the base more easily. Yep. Right. And the white, I think, is quite harsh, and I can choose this in either direction. So I've got a wall, she says, but you can't undo the pot. There we are. Let's just retrieve a pokey tool. And ungum these. I might just use the ordinary pink paint in a minute, but yeah, absolutely, Sarah. The crackles in this crackle plaster are amazing. There we are. Little bit of paint. That's why I was struggling. Got paint in the rim. Let's just grab a little bit, tiny bit of that paint. We don't need very much of it. And by dragging with this, with this foam, it's staying over the cracks, which is cool. And you can add as much or as little as you want. There we are. I'll just pop that over there. Let's turn this around. So tonight I absolutely will only put stuff on one side of my make, but I have a plan for the other side in terms of embellishments, so I will add those at another time. So yeah, so it just cracks, doesn't it? It's beautiful. It just is beautiful. It just works. And I want a little bit of a metallic feel, so I've got out the silver. It's going to be one of them days, isn't it? The silver that's in the metallic, which actually has to, I might have used. So it's beautiful. You can see it's sort of, it's going to add just a little bit of shimmer to it. Knock that in. It'll just add a little bit. Yeah, so I can see that I'm now getting a shimmer. Even if you can't, you might see better on there. Let me just pick up a bit more of that, knock it in. Just going to add just another little bit of metallic shine on the top. It's just sitting on the top, and because I've got it on the sponge, it's not going into the crackles. So I've got the brown of the base that I deliberately didn't prime before we did it. That's cool. Right. These are still wet. So let's just grab these, give them a blast, and then we can grab the umber that I've still got left sitting in there. So this is the antique paste that I'm going to put onto here rather than a wax, because it will work just that bit better. So I do appreciate the fact that everyone stays with me throughout the course of these, because I know that these projects take me a while to do, but I just don't know any other ways that I can do them. I could make them new projects again. That is an option. Always an option. So the umber is going to change the stark white, which I don't want. These things to dry. You know, things never dry fast when you want them to, do they? Of course not. Why would things dry quickly when you need them to? Yeah. Typical, isn't it? So we're going to go for the easy version now, and use just a single antique paste to age these, so that it looks a bit dirty, as if they've been down at the bottom of the garden playing in the mud. But I used antiquing gels in several colours the other day, and that was when I antiqued them then, and those will be, that will be on my YouTube channel shortly. So it's just an alternative way of doing things. There's always more than one way of getting the result that you're looking for. Each of them will have a slightly different effect. Now the antique pastes are oil-based pastes, and I keep a pot of brushes that are really in the most neglected state, and usually have some white spirit in there. I think it might be vaguely dried out. So let me just do, you know, that thing that makes everyone go and because this is oil-based, not the antiquing gels, which are water-based, I don't need to stop in between. I can just quite happily whack all of this over, all of them, and come back to it. There we are. And the first time people see me do, you know, you see people doing this, you go, really? What lunacy? You've just spent ages painting. Yeah. Painting with a fair degree of being careful. And now you've just slopped brown yuck all over everything. Yeah. That would be very true. Yeah. I'll say it how it is. But it really does make a huge difference. So now, if I wipe this back, that white isn't going to stay stark white. And tonally, it just works better. There we are. And I've got my details back in. There we are. With that. I need a little bit of dry brushing on Mr. Rabbit. A little bit of wax on the house. Let's just clean off some of the gubbins off those. Because this is wax based, it will be more difficult for me to add features, but it is possible. There we are. So we could add some pink cheeks and red mouth, but I might do that off live. Right, let's just clear that mess out the way. Put that out of harm's way. Put that out of harm's way. Okay. Get the junk off my hands because they're filthy. Right. Eeny, meeny, miny. Now then. I know what I said I was going to do first. Let's just take way too much brush on stuff on there. Let's just get rid of most of that off there. That's nearly all of that. So let's just add some detail into there. That's better. He now looks more rabbit-like and less one-toned. That can go there. And then the fun begins. Not that I haven't had fun. Right. So that's going to be difficult to see. So this is just a permanent ink pad that will dry. And it's a felt-based ink pad. So it just allows me to show up that detailing reasonably nicely and reasonably efficiently. There we are. So not a bit of bling in sight. Right. Now then, this is when we require a prayer to the balancing gods, ladies. Right. Come on, balance nicely. Because that needs to go into there. Excellent. So that is tucked in there. And now that is reasonably flat. Hey! Goodly starting point. A goodly starting point. I can see some bits I am going to have to tidy up, but that's okay. So I'm just going to ink the edges. These are from the paper cutouts. They were just a nice size. So there we are. I've got relatively small amounts of paper today, and that's cool. I'm not sure that I'm going to use that one, but the rest of them I definitely am using. And half of him is going to be covered. So in the paper pad for the paper cutouts, they look quite crude because they've got a big over paint area, which will just, again, it means that the dyes are working nicely and you don't end up with lots of mess. So let me take that one, pop that out of the way. And I know I'm going to hang him in the air and you're going to think, have you lost the plot? I really haven't lost the plot, because he's going to go down there and he's going to come up here. Okay, so hence the decision to hang him where I did. And I can see the silver nicely sparkling, but I don't think you'll be able to see any of that. And this bit doesn't matter. I'd rather have that extra bit and have to touch it up than ultimately not have enough. I think I might be getting to the end of that. Yeah, you start live. You think you've got everything undone, sorted, no messing, and then you can't manage to do it. Let's try that one instead. Oh, that, you see, that one is going to be behaving. Okay. So let's just add a little bit of express glue onto here and pop that up in the air. Okay. I want the tree. I want the greenery. Don't necessarily want the bottom part of it. These pieces are double-sided, which is great because it just gives you versatility in which direction you have things facing. Okay, and it also means that if it pokes out at the edge, it doesn't matter when it's viewed from the back. There we are. Come on. Let's stick you down there. We are not a million miles away from being manageable. There we are. So that one is going to go there. Now then, we're going to pop him there. If I just pop him there, I'm going to have a space. So I'm just going to pop this piece in. So I know he's very small, but it's just going to add the detail behind the piece. Come on, sit yourself down and dry. So would I like that shuffled over a bit? Yeah, but hey ho, here we are. So let's just take house number 1, clear as much of that off there as possible. Pop that big blob of that onto there and drop it onto the piece. Well, that's fine. Okay. Come on, behave. Sit yourself down to dry. I want this piece to come forward. Just need to let that dry, don't I, properly? There we are. So, one, two, three, wow. 4. So I'm just propping these up, okay? And these are just canvas spaces. Just want to make sure I can't see them from the front. The back I can disguise. There we are. Okay, so that is now going to go forward. Now, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Right, so these squishy green pieces were literally white clay, and I squashed them so they would sit neatly. Don't mind a bit of overspill, and I can cut if I want, behind my gnomes. Because if I try to stand my gnomes up without something extra on them, they don't have enough weight to do that. Okay, so he's going to glue on using the bottom of these. And I've got a little house. That will go into there. Okay. Now, I want Mr. Bunny to be sitting forward. So let me just tuck some glue into there and glue into there. And then I can anchor that with a bit of luck. We might need some hot glue. And I did remember to get my glue gun out. I don't very often use hot glue for things because it doesn't last very well, but it will give me instant stick. There we are. The bottom of the bunny is just quite small. Right, eeny, meeny, miny. Need that just a little bit more angled so I can see better what's happening. Okay. And I think I'm actually just going to pop him. I think we might be giving that a little bit of a haircut. We might not. We might just do that. Yeah, why not? We'll just do that. We'll just do that, which is what we originally were going to do. So let's just take our very funny shaped piece of clay, pop it onto there. And I can take my gnome and sit him into there. It's just going to provide an extra area for stability. And whilst we're at it, with that out, we will just grab that bit, get rid of the lump of crud, which is hot glue, on there, and pop that up there. Okay. Right, let's get rid of that. We might need that, but we might not. Right. And now to add some extra bits and pieces in. So let's just add in a big glob of hot glue there and tuck in a bit of moss. And this moss, the moss I've got, comes with lots of different colours. She said, quite happy looking for some different coloured mosses. There we are. Oh, there we are. So we can then put some of these pieces in. And this is when you just fiddle and faff. I know, fiddle and faff, technical terms for you just carry on adding until you're happy. If I tip this up, you might not see what I want to do very well. So just bear with while I do that. And I can see a great big glob of glue, that little dry white. So let me just get rid of that because I've moved it out of the way. There we are. Okay. Okay, that can go there, that can go there. Let's tip you back. We need a bit more moss to cover that. So let's just tuck it in. Little bits. I can squash it down after the live when I'm not going to end up with burnt fingers. You can see how that is then going to help disguise joins, ugliness, messing about. No, you can't, because let me just do these extra few bits, and then I shall move this so that you can see what I'm doing, because I appreciate at the moment you probably can't see very well what I'm doing, for which I apologize. So if I tip that, that's better. There we are. So you wouldn't know that I have got, the those horrible green bits lurking in there. We've got another, we need to have another disguise city around there. So let's just take some little bits of that and that, spread it out even. There we are. Pop that in, stick it down, put in, squash it so it's not too bulky high. There we are. I need just the tiniest bit in front of that rabbit. There we are. That's a nice small paintbrush that will work into there. Okie. So we've got our gnomes that nicely standing. We've got our moss in that. We've got that. Let me just get rid of that into there. Cool. And let's just grab some extra bits. Which might prove a little bit of a headache and a challenge, but hey ho. So some of these are clearly going to be way too long. And I'm going to tuck some of these in. So I will just grab a nice little palette knife, pop that in. I can poke that down the bottom. It'll stick in something. There we are. Okay. Let me just grab. What did I do with that one? Oh, I threw it on the floor. Because throwing it on the floor is clearly the right thing to do. Not. There we are. That can go in there. See these, and these are just bits of greenery from the floristry wholesalers. So there's nothing, I'm not using anything that is really difficult to get hold of. So that's just given us a little bit extra. I sort of want another piece there. Whether it's going to hold is another matter, but we're going to try it, because why wouldn't we? And you can put all of these single pieces, the bits that I'm chopping off, can also all go in. There we are. So that's going to sit there. Right. That will sit. Yeah, that's going to stick there. So if I want, I can start adding all of these separate pieces. I might off the live, because it might just drive you potty in doing that. Now in the UK at this time of the year, we have little primroses and primulas as part of our spring celebrations. So we're just going to, let me just put a blob of that heavy body gel on the counter. There we are. Leave that there. So I've just got some nice little yellow flowers that sort of remind me of primroses. There we are. Thank you, Georgina. Thank you very much. Can't just have 4 though. That would definitely not work for my brain, my literal brain. So let's just take another one off there. Let's just stick another one into there in front of him. Have I got some other things? Of course I've got other things. I've got other things. Let me just... So we've got a big bunch, really big bunch of extraneous bits. And I can use some of those. But actually, I'm just going... The leaves I can use on cards. So let me just see if I can... Whether I want to add... Whether I want to add with the leaf or without the leaf. Yeah, no, I quite like that. So let's just pop that into there. Can add another. Let's get rid of that white. There we are. Into there. And let's just add a third one of those. With a bit of glue. And stick it. Tuck it right into there. There we are. And let's just chop some of those single leaves. You can see if you were buying a set of florals from, you know, a paper craft shop, you would pay £6–7 possibly, maybe. For a pack. Whereas here, and you only get very few leaves when you do that, which is a pain, because I think you always need far more leaves. Whereas this way, she says, having put that on the wrong end of the plant, you get masses and masses and masses of leaves that you can then tuck in and around your piece. So I could carry on faffing and fiddling, faffing being a technical term, of course, because it's always good to have a technical term. So let me just move some of this gubbins out the way. Let's straighten the happy house, because that's on the move, because I've got that on the wonk. I've got all sorts of different coloured flowers and things, so I might yet go adding some of those in. What I do have is a contour pen. This is a white contour pen. And all I'm doing is popping this on the dots that are on the thing. They're already on the mushrooms. There we are. It just, that little white just makes such a difference. And I can, if I want, link it in, just add some texture using the white markings that are already there. It just lifts the colour from the front to the back. There we are. And I think, ladies, I am complete. Well, complete for now. I definitely am going to put something on the rest of it. Okay, let me just move this forward. There we are. Let's just pop that down. Lay that down so it's flat. Clear the gubbins out of the way. There we are. Move that off my computer now so I can see what I'm up to. There we are. So we have our little imaginary garden on an MDF watering can, and we've used the new cracking plaster and then lots of other different products just to build depth and interest and to let my imagination really fly. That's light's better. So I've got real depth and dimension. I will sort out the reverse side. I'm going to put a door and a window on the other side and then some more of the gnomes, so it will be fully reversible by the time I finished it. But that is way more than enough for this evening. So ladies, please stay safe. Remember that our Hungarian creators are live tomorrow. I think that is going to be another wall art decor product base. Vasilis is live in English on Thursday. I am back the week commencing the 21st with my regular weekly lives for Pentart, and there'll definitely be lots of mixed media pieces that will work from there on. And my intention is that I will be live in crafting together with all brands on Friday on my own page on Sunday. And please watch out for my YouTube channel because I will eventually be dual streaming on there, but I need a good few more subscribers before YouTube will let them post it as public posts. So please take care, look after yourselves, be kind, and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye.